The betrayal of trust. James was no ordinary man. He wasn't just the CEO of a renowned software company. He was a symbol of success in the eyes of many. From the very beginning of his company's establishment, he had proven himself to be a visionary, decisive, and someone who dared to face any challenge. He knew that to succeed, one could not rely on luck alone. It required relentless dedication. James's company specialized in developing software solutions for large corporations, helping them optimize workflows and improve efficiency. From a small office, James's company had expanded into several countries and achieved a multi-billion-dollar revenue. Although he had achieved everything most people could only dream of, James still felt there was something missing, something out of reach, despite having it all. And that something was Anna, his beautiful wife, the one he loved unconditionally. Anna was the woman James had always dreamed of. She was beautiful, intelligent, and always a source of emotional support. They met when James was still building his career, and she became his inspiration to push through the tough early years of his startup. At 25, Anna was the epitome of grace. Long black hair, bright eyes, and a slender frame. But what captivated James was not just her physical beauty, but her intelligence, her strength, and the burning desire to succeed that she radiated. On their wedding day, James believed they had it all: a successful career, a happy family, and a love that burned with passion. They had everything a couple could wish for. However, as time passed, James became increasingly absorbed in his work, and Anna began to feel neglected. With a busy schedule filled with constant business trips, James's time away from home grew longer. He no longer had time for the small, meaningful moments they once shared: romantic dinners, quiet evenings, or even a simple conversation. He thought that by working hard and building his empire, he was securing a bright future for both of them. What he didn't realize was that his absence was creating an emotional void in Anna's life that no material wealth could fill. Though Anna loved James, she began to feel increasingly alone. She could sense the growing distance between them, and no matter how much she tried to reach out, James was too preoccupied with expanding his business to notice. She didn't blame him for being busy, but the absence of his attention made her question their future together. Slowly, Anna started to drift, unsure of how to fill the void that was forming in her heart. Anna, being the dutiful wife, tried to fulfill her role in the marriage, but as time went on, she felt more and more isolated. She found herself throwing herself into work, taking on projects in an attempt to distract herself from the loneliness that she felt at home. Yet, none of this could replace the emotional connection she missed from James. It wasn't until James went on another long business trip that Anna met Jack, a new consultant hired by the company to help improve business strategies. Jack was everything that Anna hadn't realized she needed: confident, charming, and possessing a magnetic personality that drew people to him. Unlike the typical men Anna had encountered, Jack had an uncanny ability to make her feel truly seen and heard. Each time they spoke, Anna felt as if she were connecting on a deeper level than she ever had with James in recent months. At first, their relationship was strictly professional. Jack, who had been hired to help the company with strategy, had a strong presence at the office, often working alongside Anna on various tasks. But soon, his presence became more than just that of a colleague. Jack, with his easy charm and ability to connect with others, began spending more time with Anna, offering her a listening ear when she needed someone to talk to. They would grab coffee during breaks, talk about everything from work to personal lives, and soon enough, Anna found herself confiding in him in ways she hadn't been able to with James for quite some time. Jack, understanding Anna's vulnerabilities, began to subtly insert himself into her life. He wasn't just a sounding board for her frustrations. He started to become the emotional support Anna had been craving. With every conversation, every shared moment, Anna began to feel an emotional pull that she couldn't ignore. She didn't know how to describe it, but Jack's attention made her feel special in a way that James hadn't in months, maybe even years. Despite her initial resistance, Anna slowly began to open up to Jack. Their conversations became longer, their interactions more frequent. Jack was always there, offering support, making her feel appreciated and seen in a way she hadn't felt in a long time. Each time they met, Anna began to realize that Jack was filling a gap that she didn't even know existed in her life. As their relationship developed, Anna's internal conflict grew. On one hand, she loved James and wanted to make her marriage work. On the other, Jack was slowly becoming more important to her, not just as a friend, but as someone who truly understood her. She found herself caught between loyalty to her husband and the undeniable connection she felt with Jack. Meanwhile, James, who was away on another long business trip, remained blissfully unaware of what was happening in his marriage. He continued to focus on building his empire, thinking that everything would eventually return to normal once he had more time for Anna. He had no idea that, in his absence, Jack had begun to occupy the emotional space that he had once filled. Jack wasn't just a consultant in the company. He had become a fixture in Anna's life, a constant presence that slowly but surely started to weave his way into her emotional world. He wasn't just giving Anna advice on work. He was becoming the person she turned to for reassurance, for understanding, for everything that was lacking in her marriage to James. His charisma was undeniable, but it was his ability to make her feel heard and valued that kept drawing her in. It didn't take long for Jack to figure out that Anna's emotional needs weren't being met by James. He saw the loneliness in her eyes, the subtle signs of frustration that she tried so hard to hide. Jack, being the astute man he was, used this knowledge to his advantage. He began to subtly manipulate Anna's thoughts, planting seeds of doubt in her mind about her marriage and the future she was building with James. He wasn't overt about it. He didn't have to be. Jack was patient, taking his time to show Anna that there was more to life than the distant, disconnected marriage she had with James. Each meeting between Anna and Jack was a calculated move on his part. He knew exactly how to push Anna's emotional buttons, how to make her question her life choices, her future with James, and most importantly, her sense of self-worth. Jack didn't just want Anna's attention. He wanted her to feel that she deserved more than what James was offering. He played on her insecurities, making her believe that she could have the life she truly desired, one that was full of excitement, passion, and validation. Anna, despite her best efforts to resist, found herself drawn deeper into Jack's world. Every time she spent time with him, she felt more alive, more seen, and more in control of her own destiny. Jack had a way of making her feel powerful, something that she hadn't felt in a long time. But with each passing day, Anna was walking a dangerous line. She knew that what she was doing was wrong, but she couldn't deny the pull she felt toward Jack. He wasn't just filling an emotional void. He was offering her something that James no longer could: attention, affection, and the promise of something new. As Anna became more entangled in Jack's influence, her relationship with James grew even more strained. She began to pull away from him, making excuses for her distance and coldness. She no longer found joy in their time together, and the emptiness she felt in her marriage only made her seek more of Jack's attention. Meanwhile, James continued to focus on his company, unaware of the growing rift between him and his wife. He believed that once his work was done, everything would fall back into place. Little did he know, the woman he loved was slipping away from him, and Jack was there to take her place. What began as innocent conversations soon transformed into something deeper, something Anna hadn't prepared herself for. Jack had skillfully created a bond, one that neither James nor anyone else could provide. The attention, the understanding, the way Jack made her feel seen. Anna couldn't deny that these moments were like a breath of fresh air in a relationship that had started to suffocate. Anna had always been the kind of woman who valued loyalty, who believed in the sanctity of marriage. But with each passing day, the emotional distance between her and James grew, while the bond she shared with Jack flourished. She found herself waiting eagerly for the next conversation, the next moment alone with him. It wasn't that she didn't love James anymore. It was just that Jack made her feel alive, like she had a purpose outside the boundaries of her marriage. He didn't see her as a mere extension of James's success. He saw her for who she truly was. And in his eyes, Anna was special, someone worth fighting for. It started with small gestures. Jack would bring her coffee during late-night work sessions, share books he thought she'd enjoy, and offer her advice on everything from professional challenges to personal dilemmas. But soon, those gestures evolved into something more intimate. He began to touch her arm when making a point, his fingers brushing against her skin, sending a jolt of electricity through her veins. The lingering glances, the way he would lean in just a bit closer than necessary, Anna began to crave it all. One evening, after a long day of working late on a project, Jack walked Anna to her car. The night air was cool, and the distant hum of the city seemed to fade as they walked in silence. The tension between them palpable. Jack, as usual, was the first to speak, his voice smooth and comforting. "You know, Anna," he said, his voice low and intimate, "I've never met anyone like you. You've got this strength that's hard to find." Anna's heart skipped a beat. The words, though flattering, carried weight that went beyond simple compliments. He wasn't just admiring her, he was speaking to her heart, to a part of her that James had long since ignored. Jack didn't just want to win her over with his charm. He wanted to make her feel like she deserved more than what she was settling for. I appreciate that, Jack," Anna responded, her voice trembling slightly. She wasn't sure why her body felt as if it were betraying her. She should have resisted. She knew she should. But with every look, every touch, Jack was breaking down her walls, piece by piece. Jack's smile was slow, deliberate. He didn't say anything at first, but instead stepped closer, his gaze locked on hers. The air around them seemed to thicken, as if time had stopped. Without a word, he reached out and gently cupped her face in his hands, his thumb brushing against her cheek. Anna's breath hitched, and for a moment she felt completely lost in him. He was the only person who made her feel seen, heard, and valued, and for the first time in a long while, she didn't feel invisible. "I think you deserve so much more than this," Jack whispered, his lips barely grazing her ear. His words were like a spell, wrapping around her heart, drawing her in. Without thinking, Anna closed the gap between them, her lips meeting his in a kiss that was both soft and desperate. It wasn't a moment of weakness. It was a moment of realization. She had been starving for attention, affection, and intimacy, and Jack had given it to her in abundance. As they broke apart, Anna looked up into his eyes, her pulse racing. She knew that what had just transpired could never be undone. She had crossed a line, one that she would never be able to erase. The guilt began to creep in, but it was quickly replaced by the powerful rush of emotions that Jack had awakened in her. She couldn't stop now, even if she wanted to. The pull between them was too strong. "Anna," Jack said softly, his voice a mixture of satisfaction and promise, "you deserve to be happy. I'll make sure of that." In that moment, Anna realized that her life had just been irreversibly changed. There was no going back to the way things were. And as Jack's lips found hers again, she couldn't help but feel a sense of both fear and excitement. The path ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, Anna felt alive. Jack wasn't just after Anna's affection. He had a bigger plan, one that involved her loyalty, her trust, and ultimately, her influence within James's empire. He had been plotting this for months, patiently laying the groundwork for the perfect takedown. Anna, caught up in her own desires and emotions, had become an unwitting pawn in Jack's scheme. It all began with subtle suggestions. Jack started planting seeds in Anna's mind, encouraging her to question her role in the company. He made her doubt James's decisions, his priorities, and even his ability to lead. "You know, you're more capable than you realize," he would say. "If it weren't for James, I think you could run this company on your own." At first, Anna brushed off the comments. She loved James and had always believed in his vision. But Jack's persistence wore her down, piece by piece. Slowly, the doubts began to fester. She started to notice cracks in James's decisions, small things that Jack had pointed out in passing, and before long she found herself questioning whether James had the best interests of the company at heart, or her own best interests for that matter. Jack, with his manipulative charm, slowly shifted Anna's perspective. He painted James as a man too focused on the big picture, too absorbed in his empire, to care for the people who made it all possible. In Jack's eyes, Anna was the real mastermind, the one with the potential to steer the company to greater heights. All she needed was the right push, the right moment to take control. And Jack knew exactly how to create that moment. He began feeding Anna ideas about taking over the company, presenting her with small opportunities to gather information, to learn about James's weaknesses. and to influence key decisions. At first, Anna hesitated, but Jack's words echoed in her mind. He made her believe that she deserved more, that she had the power to change everything. All she had to do was take the first step. "James doesn't see you for what you truly are," Jack told her one evening, his hand resting on hers. "But I do. I see your potential. You can have it all, Anna. Everything you've ever wanted." With Jack's encouragement, Anna began to take action. She started to gather confidential information from James's meetings, subtly influencing decisions that would shape the future of the company. She did it all under the guise of helping, of supporting James. But in reality, she was positioning herself for something much larger, something that would give her the power and control Jack had promised. Little did she know, Jack was already planning his next move. He was slowly infiltrating the company, earning James's trust, and manipulating key players behind the scenes. With Anna's help, Jack was positioning himself as the future of the company, someone who would eventually take over, with Anna by his side. As Anna became more entangled in Jack's plot, she couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement, but also fear. She was playing a dangerous game, one where the stakes were far higher than she had ever imagined. And yet, she couldn't stop herself. The lure of power, the promise of a future where she no longer had to live in James's shadow, was too strong to resist. But Jack's plan was far from over. As he manipulated Anna into doing his bidding, he was also making moves of his own. And soon, the consequences of their actions would come crashing down on them both. Anna had never imagined she would be capable of betraying James. But the more she worked with Jack, the more she became convinced that she was doing what was best for everyone. She convinced herself that James didn't understand her needs, her potential, and that she deserved to be in control of her own future. Jack had given her a taste of power, and now she couldn't go back. As the days passed, Anna became increasingly involved in Jack's scheme. She began to make moves within the company that undermined James's authority, all while maintaining the facade of being the supportive wife. She helped Jack secure critical business deals, pushed certain initiatives that would benefit Jack's influence, and subtly steered James's decisions toward outcomes that favored Jack's interests. One day, Anna found herself sitting in James's office, discussing a major investment opportunity with him. She was supposed to be the supportive partner, offering advice and ensuring that they were making the right decisions. But in that moment, she realized that she had become something entirely different. She was no longer just James's wife. She was a key player in Jack's game, one who was helping to tear down everything James had built. As she looked at James, who was engrossed in the details of the proposal, Anna felt a pang of guilt. But it was quickly overshadowed by the rush of excitement she felt from knowing that she had the power to influence this moment, to shape the future of the company. She knew that if she played her cards right, she could be the one to take control, to ensure that Jack's plans came to fruition. And in that moment, Anna understood the full extent of her betrayal. She had crossed a line, one that could never be undone. And yet, as she glanced at James, his back turned to her, she couldn't help but wonder if she had made the right choice. Was it worth it? Was this the price of finally having the life she always wanted? Jack didn't stop at winning Anna's affection. He knew that to execute his plan, he needed the involvement of her family. He understood that her family wasn't just any ordinary group of people. They were full of ambition and willing to do anything to change their fate. This connection wasn't just about familial ties, it was about economic power, an advantage that couldn't be overlooked. Anna, though hesitant at first, eventually agreed to help Jack. She had begun to see what Jack could offer her: power, freedom, and a chance to escape James's shadow. And once she crossed that line, there was no going back. Anna convinced her family to join the plan, promising them that this would be their chance to assert themselves in the business world. Anna's family began investing in the projects that Jack had secretly been preparing. While these were small steps at first, the projects were all linked directly to James's company. Jack had developed intricate financial strategies, subtly exploiting and luring in key partners that James had built relationships with over the years. Anna's family, under Jack's guidance, began leveraging these relationships to create new ventures that, in reality, were just well-disguised scams. With each successful project, Jack solidified his control over Anna's family. Anna herself began to feel more and more drawn into this world. She was no longer just James's wife. She had become a crucial part of a much larger plan, one where she held significant influence. Her family was beginning to latch on to these legitimate business opportunities, which were, in reality, empty promises set up for the sole purpose of siphoning off money into Jack's pockets. As Jack's influence grew, Anna started to believe in the dream he sold her, that she could take control, that she could have everything she ever wanted, and all with Jack by her side. The promise of power was intoxicating. She wasn't just supporting Jack's plans for the future anymore. She was actively making decisions, pulling the strings behind the scenes. However, Anna's family didn't realize they were being used. They thought their participation in these business ventures would elevate their status, but in truth, they were just pawns in Jack's game, unknowingly helping him lay the groundwork for his grand takeover. James trusted Jack completely. He never suspected that someone he had entrusted with so much responsibility could be plotting to undermine him. Jack was the one person James had relied on to help expand the company, to push it into new markets, to innovate and keep up with the competition. Every time Jack proposed something, James listened carefully, believing it would only help the company grow stronger. In recent months, Jack had proven his worth. He always showed up at the right moments, solving problems that James had no time to address, handling crises with ease. Jack's reputation within the company grew, and he gained the admiration of everyone around him. James trusted him more and more, even giving him more authority over some of the company's most crucial projects. Everything seemed to be moving smoothly, and James had no reason to doubt that Jack was doing everything in the best interest of the company. But behind James's back, Jack was constructing his own empire. He wasn't just gaining James's trust, he was also securing the loyalty of other key figures within the company. Slowly, without James realizing it, Jack was positioning himself to be the real leader of the company. One evening, after a long meeting, James returned home late, unaware of the subtle shift happening in his marriage. Anna, as always, greeted him with a smile, treating him with the warmth she had always shown. But tonight, James couldn't shake the feeling that something was different. The familiar warmth in Anna's eyes seemed to be replaced by an unsettling indifference. He didn't know what had changed, but it felt as if the emotional connection they once shared was slipping away. Meanwhile, Jack continued his work, making strategic moves behind the scenes. His influence on the company grew stronger, and he took on more responsibility, advising James on crucial decisions. Every time James was away, Jack found new ways to further his control. James trusted him with more and more, believing that Jack's input would lead the company to even greater success. What James didn't realize was that with every decision, every deal, Jack was tightening his grip on the company and on Anna. Jack wasn't just after control of the company. He had a much bigger financial plan in mind. His scheme to take over everything James had built was carefully orchestrated, each move meticulously planned to ensure the ultimate takeover. Everything started with small suggestions. Jack slowly planted seeds of doubt in Anna's mind about James's ability to run the company, about his decisions, and even about his future plans. You know, you could do so much more than just being James's wife. You're brilliant, Anna. You deserve to be in control. At first, Anna rejected these thoughts. She had always believed in James and his vision. But Jack's persistent words began to take root. Slowly, Anna began to notice the cracks in James's decisions, small things Jack had pointed out. She started questioning whether James really knew what was best for the company, whether he even truly understood her needs or the potential she had to make things better. Jack didn't just want Anna to question James. He wanted to make her believe that she had the power to shape the future of the company. He convinced her that, with his help, she could be the one in charge, not James. With each subtle suggestion, Anna began to trust Jack more. She started to see that maybe she could have everything Jack promised her: control, power, and the life she had always wanted. Anna's actions became more direct. She began gathering sensitive information from James's meetings, all the while pretending to be supportive. She started guiding decisions in a direction that would benefit Jack. Every move she made, Jack had carefully set the stage for. She was slowly and unknowingly becoming a key player in Jack's plan to take everything. But Jack wasn't stopping there. He was also maneuvering himself into key positions within the company, gaining more and more control. Jack wasn't just a consultant anymore. He had become the right-hand man of James, someone the CEO trusted implicitly. Jack had already positioned himself as an invaluable asset, earning the trust of the board, the investors, and the employees. Meanwhile, Anna, believing she was helping, was feeding Jack the information he needed to move forward with his plot. Jack had cleverly played his cards. He was becoming indispensable to James, positioning himself to take over every critical decision. Meanwhile, Anna, who had never questioned her loyalty to James, was now deeply involved in the conspiracy. What had started as a simple affair had now become a full-fledged takeover, one that Anna didn't even realize she was part of until it was almost too late. The financial conspiracy Jack had set in motion was moving swiftly. The investments James was making, the partnerships he was forming, they were all being manipulated from behind the scenes. Jack used his influence to guide Anna into pushing for deals that would drain the company's assets, all while painting a picture of success to James. Jack knew that, in the end, once the company was in disarray, he would be the one to step in and take control. Anna, by then, would be too deep into the plan to back out. As the days passed, Anna became more entrenched in the web Jack had woven. She had crossed the line, and with each step she was sinking further into the trap. The excitement she felt from the power, the control, was intoxicating, but she couldn't shake the nagging feeling that she was losing something precious: her integrity, her marriage, and her future. Jack, however, was relentless. He had no intention of stopping until he had everything. Anna, caught in his orbit, was too far gone to even think about backing out. The pieces of his plan were falling into place perfectly, and soon everything James had worked for would belong to Jack, just as he had always intended. The storm was about to hit, and James had no idea. Every decision he had made, every investment, every step he had taken to build his empire, had been subtly undermined by the people he trusted the most. The closer Jack got to his goal, the more brazen his moves became. Anna, once the love of his life, had now become the key player in the destruction of everything he had built. James had always prided himself on being sharp, on understanding the dynamics of his company, his market, his employees. But Jack had been playing the long game, drawing him into a false sense of security while building a quiet empire of his own. It wasn't until one of James's oldest and most trusted advisors, Paul, caught wind of some strange financial discrepancies that the truth started to unravel. Paul, a senior executive who had worked with James since the beginning, had noticed that a few of the company's major contracts had unusual clauses that didn't make sense, clauses that were pulling the company in a direction it shouldn't be going. The more Paul dug into the numbers, the more troubling things became. He stumbled upon evidence of Jack's growing influence, of money being siphoned off into accounts no one had authorized. And, most shockingly, he found a pattern of financial transactions linked directly to Anna's family. Paul, shaken by what he had found, immediately scheduled a private meeting with James. It was late one evening when James walked into the office, exhausted from another day of endless meetings, only to be confronted by Paul. "James, we need to talk. It's about the company. About Jack." Paul's voice was low, urgent. "What's going on, Paul?" James asked, his brow furrowed. "You're scaring me." Paul sat him down, showing him the evidence, the transactions, the shady deals, the unusual patterns in the company's financial reports. "I've been watching Jack closely. He's manipulating the company's growth for his own gain, and he's doing it right under your nose. You're not seeing it, James, but I see it. He's been setting the stage for a takeover." The realization hit James like a punch to the gut. He couldn't breathe, couldn't process the information fast enough. What do you mean? Jack, my right-hand man? Exactly. He's been slowly positioning himself as indispensable to the company. And Anna? She's not just supporting him, she's been helping him every step of the way, Paul said, his voice almost a whisper now. "James, your wife has been part of this for months. She's been feeding him the information he needs to manipulate the company's direction. She's in too deep now." James's mind reeled. He couldn't grasp it. He had trusted Anna more than anyone else. She was the woman he had loved, the one person he thought would always have his back. And now, to find out that she was helping Jack take everything from him, it was unfathomable. But the evidence was right in front of him. He couldn't deny it anymore. Anna, the woman he had built his life with, was part of the betrayal. He was living in a nightmare. James knew what he had to do. The betrayal cut deeper than he had ever imagined, but he had no choice now. He needed to confront Anna, to expose the lies and the plans Jack had orchestrated from the shadows. But what he didn't anticipate was how shattered he would feel, how much it would break him to confront the woman he had once trusted with his heart. It was late one night when James finally decided to face Anna. She was sitting in their living room, her eyes tired, her face tense from the stress of the past few days. She had no idea that James had uncovered the truth. She had no idea that the life they had built was crumbling around her. "Anna," James's voice was steady, but there was a sharpness to it that she hadn't heard in years. "We need to talk." Anna looked up at him, her heart racing. She could tell something was wrong. "James, what's going on? Why do you look so different?" "I know everything, Anna," James said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I know about Jack. I know about the deals. I know you've been feeding him information. You've been helping him destroy everything I've worked for." Her eyes widened in shock, but she didn't say anything. Instead, she looked away, unable to meet his gaze. "Tell me it's not true," James pressed, his voice cracking. "Tell me you weren't part of this." Anna's breath caught in her throat. The weight of the truth settled over her like a dark cloud. She knew this moment was inevitable, but she wasn't prepared for it to come so soon. She didn't know how to explain what had happened, how to justify the choices she had made. James, I didn't mean for it to go this far." Anna's voice was weak, full of regret. "It started as just helping Jack, just a little bit, but then it just spiraled. I didn't know how to stop it." James's heart shattered as he heard her words. The betrayal, the manipulation, it had all started so small, so seemingly harmless. But now it had become something far bigger than either of them could have imagined. "Do you love him, Anna?" James asked, his voice shaking with emotion. "Is that what this was? Was it about him, about the power, or was it just about wanting something I couldn't give you?" Anna looked at him, her eyes filled with tears. "No, James, it wasn't about love. It was about me feeling lost. I felt invisible, and Jack made me feel seen. He gave me something you couldn't. I never wanted to hurt you, but I did." James closed his eyes, the pain too much to bear. "You didn't just hurt me, Anna. You hurt everything we built. You betrayed me, and you betrayed yourself. All of this, it was never just about love. It was about trust. And now, there's nothing left." Anna's tears fell freely now, but there was no forgiveness in James's eyes. He couldn't bring himself to forgive her. Not yet. Not when the wound was so fresh. In the weeks that followed, everything crumbled. The company James had spent his entire life building began to fall apart. Investors pulled out, business deals fell through, and the company that had once been a symbol of success was now a sinking ship. Jack had orchestrated his takeover, and Anna, despite her regret, couldn't undo the damage that had already been done. James had to make painful decisions, ones he never imagined he'd have to make. He cut ties with Anna, distancing himself from her, from the family that had once been his everything. The betrayal had broken him in ways that couldn't be healed quickly. But even as his world fell apart, he refused to let the remnants of his empire disappear completely. He would rebuild, but it would be on his terms, not Jack's. Anna, now left with nothing, spent her days trying to come to terms with what she had done. She realized too late the cost of her choices, the price of the power she had craved. Jack, having successfully infiltrated the company, no longer needed her. He had everything he wanted: power, money, control. And Anna, once so full of ambition and hope, was left to live with the consequences of her actions. James, in the end, found solace in his work, in the knowledge that while he had lost everything, he still had the strength to start again. He reflected on the lessons he had learned, the importance of trust, of loyalty, and of knowing when to walk away. The future was uncertain, but he knew one thing for sure. He would never again let anyone take what he had worked so hard to build. And though the pain of betrayal would never fully disappear, James had finally learned to trust himself again.